Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's the 16th of October 2023. Third attempt to make this video, and honestly it's I haven't made a video in 2 months. I've just not been able to do it emotionally. Absolute overload. So much to discuss, so much going on, so much has gone on since I last made a video, and emotionally I've barely been able to touch what's been going on. Obviously I've been following it all, and where to start with this video though is, so many of you are going to be thinking I should probably start right there with that that post there from Brandon Corey Nagley there. He posted on the 9th of September. Epic shot. I just opened it up right there because it was a magnificent shot, and it's exactly what I told you were going to see. Except I was imagining it was actually going to get much closer. Just over here. Anyway, see, we've got Hydra coming out here. This is the one in question. So without trying to overly complicate it, but this is the one we're talking about coming out here, that I currently call Jupiter, even though I call it in this model Hydra, and it's become this very convoluted with so many different flybys there going over the top. And I was telling you that Hydra, I know that's 2019 and what have you, but it's a very similar thing. That passage there that I've just happened to stop it on there is exactly what we've just charted. This object, and now it's gone behind. It went behind Earth when Brandon captured that shot, and that's what that's very much what I explored in my last few videos. What we're going to see, this massive blue object that was coming in. We'd seen this these are the same. We'd seen this one predicted exactly to come in when I said it would come in and be seen like this, as it was seen, and cause a massive earthquake. And like I say in many of my videos in the comments, after that, certainly in the Guardian, Guardian Online or whatever they call it, Guardian website, the comment, lots of people are calling it the kind of earthquake cloud. It's become this kind of like standing joke, hasn't it? And then we saw it again, obviously just as predicted, because it's a pair, and ironically we have seen shots of the pair. That was Mr. MBB 333 on the 7th of August. Dave, look at that. Not me though. And then another pair there, and that was later, 26th of September, and that's obviously going from the daylight sky and finally ran backwards into our night sky. That we expect to see those. We've got all the seismology, we've got the sightings. We've tracked those for years and years and years. They're as consistent as we've got a new one coming in now, obviously. I mean, outside of that, before we even look at the new one coming in, we've got to remember that whilst we've been watching this blue one, we have been watching it, we have been seeing it, all the effects of it, more than seeing it. But obviously I've shown you shots of it all the way through, these unusual anomalies. But it's much harder to see something that's right up there close to the sun, because the sun blocks out everything. So when it's right up there, really close to the sun, coming towards us, we just haven't got a clue. The only time you can ever see them is obviously during a total solar eclipse. And all this news, well, how true any of this news is, that they fired up several rockets before the eclipse to obfuscate something. That's the only thing I could think of. When Einstein supposedly observed an eclipse in, I guess it must have been about 1906, 1907, whenever he did, that came to his, led to his kind of like him coming to all his grand theories that just were built on the fact that the planets weren't where they're supposed to be, and stars weren't where they're supposed to be when he looked at a solar eclipse. Not an annular eclipse, by the way, because you've still got light, but nonetheless, it's more than 80, nearly 90% of all the light's gone in an annular eclipse. Because I saw an annular eclipse in the bottom of India once. Actually, I bought an Enfield once when I was in India, and I was writing Laughing Gas actually, and I actually got to the end of Laughing Gas, as in it was a real muddled mess of assemblage, and I realised I needed, even though I was in India, I realised I needed a break from the process of writing the book, and I needed to leave it alone for a little bit, and so I grabbed an Enfield and bought an Enfield, a big old one of these big old 1950s motorbikes. They're lovely. Bop, 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 bop. I chopped it up a bit, had some fun with it, and took it down to the bottom of India, Rameshwaram, which is a little peninsula before it goes right off onto, obviously there's no road or routes, but they do reckon there was ancient roads that actually led from the bottom of India. That point where the branch, Rameshwaram, that goes off to Sri Lanka. And I had this massive 10-foot surfboard, and I was going to try and take it across there, and I don't know, it was all a bit of a mad one. But anyway, I had a great ride on the Enfield. It was like 3 weeks off on a mad ride. But I saw an annular eclipse there. And why did I see an annular eclipse there? Maybe that's not where I saw it. I don't know, I think it was an annular eclipse. It was an annular eclipse. But when you see enough eclipses, you're not really staring at the eclipse anymore. First eclipse you'll see, you're like, oh, it absolutely blows your mind. And then it's all about like not looking at the eclipse itself, but actually looking all around. That is suddenly visible. The whole vista that is suddenly visible. That is a whole view that is completely omitted to your eyes, and so you get a feast of what's really going on. And suddenly a load of planets aren't there that are supposed to be there, and your man's got a lovely theory that they've all disappeared behind the sun because the sun's gravity's pulled them all in and made them all vanish, and that's the theory of relativity. And how he knew the constant velocity of light, like how he knew that protons and neutrons, and as we're doing right now, how he knew that lead ions accelerated to the most high speed and collided, which they're about to collide right now. Interesting, they're about to do one of their biggest experiments right now with the Large Hadron Collider. But how he knew that you would get lead ions up to exactly 11,000 cycles around a kind of 27-kilometer long ring in 1 second. How he knew that speed, how he worked out the constant velocity of light, and we wouldn't be able to go faster than that. And sure enough, we can't. And but anyway, we've seen, ironically, in Europe we're getting volcanoes. Isn't it interesting this going on? Because this is just when they're also, this could be planets, but and we've got well, just stay with this for a shake, because first, we're getting an awakening volcano on the mainland in Europe, and that's the first time as far I know, that kind of like January, February, I think March 1944 was when Vesuvius last went off, but it could have been February. But February, March, Vesuvius last went off on them. I think that's one of the last European mainland volcanoes that I know that has gone off in the last since. And suddenly we see 61 volcanoes erupting, and the oceans suddenly reach 101 degrees Fahrenheit. That's like 37, 38 degrees Celsius, whatever it's and I don't know how, how is climate change going to try and take the ocean temperature and turn it into a human-caused problem? This is the crazy situation you're facing now, because this is you, me on trial. This, and with what's happening with the Large Hadron Collider really right now. Remember what I wrote in the back of my book, Laughing Gas, and I often refer to it. I'm going to read some other bits as well, and I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey today. But Dobbs is unwittingly becoming an undercover psychic detective. on the trail of the greatest gold robbery ever conceived, so large that it's taken quite some time, millennia in fact, to plan and get everything in place. Now it seems all the thieves have to do in this romantic and deeply obscure psychedelic thriller is blow the safe doors, but that's not as easy as it might sound. There's only one thing powerful enough to bust through the walls of this time-locked, vaulted world, and that's karma. If you can harness enough of it and apply it in the right way at the right place, well, karma mixed in with the essential incendiary ingredients, pain and fear, then the door can be blown clean off its hinges. So there's this notion that when I wrote this book, of this understanding that something has to happen. You know, this book, writing this book, is a guy charged after a blast of laughing gas. He's had a really, really terrible vision where he's seen his country being used as the Trojan horse to break up the European Union and feed it into a war against Russia. To break up, you know, it's all just kind of like culminating in this event to time something up with something else. It's bringing things together, and so I became I didn't know anything about Planet X. That was given to me. In 2014. That's when I suddenly realised planets were involved in this massive equation, and that's when it started getting very, very, very interesting for me. Let me just play you this.
Last year, the ocean absorbed the equivalent of 7 Hiroshima bombs detonating every second in the ocean. Every second of every day for the entire year, the massive number.
This is your exhaust pipes, by the way. This is all your car exhaust pipes. You naughty, naughty, naughty little fiends. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy because directly after this story, you know, that is I think it's what he called it, a terajoule or something, and this is 1 terajoule. You know what I mean? And this is, you know, it's he just goes on. It's just drastic figures. And if you are not found guilty of the crime of pumping out carbon dioxide immediately, remembering that, like I often say, Stromboli on a big eruption chucks out 80 million tons of carbon dioxide. You know what I mean? So it makes anything like we're producing just seem like really, it's just... And then you've got a massive volume of volcanoes, and then we're not even talking about all the underwater volcanoes, because, you know, he's talking about the kind of the ocean temperature off the coast of Florida, where the temperature went up to 101 degrees Fahrenheit. But you understand that the Pacific's been hammered, the blob section. Now, the reason the blob doesn't reach 101 degrees Fahrenheit is because the blob's in the Pacific, and it's a massive ocean, and you've got what is... what do you call it? You've got, got it. I haven't got it on a map there. There's a few videos I wanted to get. We can go to, just scroll down to the bottom of those, and we can go to, oh look. Will Russell Brand and Bob Dobbs be jailed on the eve of the EU election? You've got to watch that. If you ever want a bit of amusement, it was like predicting so much crazy stuff. And that was my first ever video, and that will take you. You know, it talks about the Ukraine. It's back in 2014. It's all about Ukraine and what's happening with the big thing there, and what's happening with Europe, and how this is going to be used, and blah blah blah. And this is, you know, it's bizarrely bizarre. It's surprisingly right. What I'm going to do, this is probably going to play an ad. No, look at that, it didn't. So we shall come to that bit there. real. So yeah, so that's the I don't know if I can get it without the ring. Is this the true Iron Curtain? Where the split really occurred that caused, well, this is where the fun really starts. This is what we don't really like to look at, but that's obviously the Kamchatka Peninsula, this arm of Russia that comes down, and this is all Japan and what have you over here, and I guess this is kind of like British Columbia and Alaska and what have you, and this kind of like this used to be the what do you call it? It used to be the Emperor seamount chain, but then it came on the map in about 2000 and became the Emperor Hawaiian seamount chain, and this 4,500 kilometer long chain, and this around here is where the blob happens. So you can imagine that underwater volcanoes going there, and ironically, the day after that chap I just showed you, telling us, you know, that the ocean's boiling because of you, and you need to take a hit. The temperature's been absolutely boiling here. This is above here where the blob's been. So there's been this huge, great temperature. You can imagine all the volcanoes going off around the side, sending up all this dust, which is capturing, because this dust, obviously, as soon as it gets to super high altitude, it becomes very cold. Any moisture, you can't have rain without a particle, and suddenly you've got volcanoes sending up 100 trillion million squillion, and you've got serious moisture going up, and you've got serious amount of particles going up to absorb the moisture. These ideas that a super volcano goes off and bam, and the dust stays in the air for for years, just not possible. It's just not the way a water world works, and we live in a water world. Water requires particles up in the air to be there, cold, so they can condense on, and once they condense on, they turn into rain, they fall straight back down, and you just get loads of rain. You get rivers of rain. Dust doesn't stay in the air long. It doesn't linger up like they suggest, unless it gets obviously above the kind of level of the of the rain, and then it's got to be in an orbit. It's not just going to sit up there and just think, well, I've got nothing better to do. You know, hydrogen would float away in our atmosphere, but it gets pulled back into the party because it gets oxidized by oxygen, so it gets pulled back. But dust is not just going to sit up there in space. You know, there's lots of crazy stories that we've been given about everything that we just take as read, but nonetheless, this is another blob point. This is another heating point. This is another real common point. And of course, any moisture coming, depending on which way the winds are going in that time, is going to trap by any of these volcanoes going around there. And then that is going to that's going to suck up that moisture in a massive turbine, and then as soon as it goes above land, it's going to lose its lift, and it's going to dump its load, and you're going to get equivalent to massive rivers taking what would have been the global kind of source of water precipitation around the globe. And it would have travelled and dropped off little bits here and there where dust had come up from various different places and taken water around the globe, and suddenly that just gets stopped off. And the same thing's happening with the El Niños and that sort of stuff. You know, it's getting so much moisture is getting sucked up because of volcanoes in things like in Mexico, Popocatépetl, which is a massive amount of dust that keeps coming up, and that, you know, so much moisture that would otherwise come up through South America, and move up through Central America and move up into Americas and that sort of stuff. They're just getting attacked by this dust, and this dust is just sucking them all up into these superstorms, and they're just waiting for land to drop these megastorms on them. We're surrounded. We have been surrounded by the most incredible activity, and we're going to try and blame it again on humanity, because if we can blame it on humanity, then you have to take a hit. But if there's any evidence that there's something else, and you know, we're through with this bullshit. And of course, then Brandon Corey Nagley posted this, and he's not the only one who posts these, but he's very dedicated. You know, I know he's an absolute fanatical Christian when it comes to kind of like Jesus is coming, and you know, I'm not of that ilk. And in another way, I kind of discovering cosmic numerology all over Planet X, and it's so cosmic that I don't need to look at Zakar Sitchin. I mean, Zakar Sitchin didn't really show that many sightings. He talks about historical writings and how they corroborate what we were seeing in terms of our sightings. But he was much more of a historian than an astronomer or a sky watcher. If you're on this video and you're watching this video is Sky Watchers. This is about what we're seeing. This is about our time. This is what we're experiencing, and what we're bringing all this information together, and what we're globally seeing, and putting it all together with all the seismology, with all the kind of like volcanism, with all the crazy kind of weathers and climatic sort of stuff we're seeing, with all the big geological changes, and we're getting signs in the heavens. And one of the old quatrains my dad used to talk about was from the Nostradamus things. This is not a good translation of that. I often find this with translations of Nostradamus is that people have agendas of where they want to go, and I find it myself as well. I have to really kind of snap myself out of it and that sort of stuff, and just say no. But the just what's it say? And so I just stuck that into a French translation. Migrate from Geneva. Migrate from Geneva all over. Saturn from gold to iron will change. I don't know how. Geneva all over. Oh, migrate from Geneva all over. So I guess that's everyone should leave Geneva. Saturn from gold to iron will change. Because of my whole Planet X thing, and because of what happened in 1903 and the thousands, if not millions, of tons of iron that fell from the skies, caused ships to nearly capsize. They had to get it off their decks, and and the counter rapos will exterminate all. Before the advent, heaven will make signs. Now, it was the counter rapos. In his translation, he didn't even put contra rapos, which to me, when I think of contrary, I think of contrary rays of kind of positively charged something. Exterminate all. It's and when I started writing, I just come back to that shot and have a think. But I think I can talk about this shot next, because Mr. MVB 333 posted this, and it's from the ISS, International Space Station, and it was posted on the 8th of October. And I've never seen anything like this, apart from the day that the video the news posted of a massive load of asteroids moving in the day. But this I believe was Mary Hall, and he often talks about Mary Hall, and she often sits there on the footage and strolls through it, or just streams through it and just captures things and gets them before they might even have a chance to see them and delete them themselves, or just catch views of certain things that perhaps they haven't noticed on the feeds before they cut the feeds, or maybe they want us to see them. But this is around about the sort of same time that they're firing up their Large Hadron Collider as well. Now, obviously we're seeing this, but I read to you the kind of like the the back of the book. And before I go, what sounds like the road of fear, because we don't know what's happening here, but the whole message in Laughing Gas was when I put my question to the gods, and I thank them for showing me what I'm understanding now as Jupiter, and showing me this place that's opened up to me and all of us if we understand that we can only enter in peace. It's not like this realm. It's not a karmic realm. It's a peaceful realm. It's a peaceful and consensual realm where all bring their best that they've created to the table, and that's what everyone brings, and everyone only offers their best, and everyone comes in peace. And this planet and coming to this space and building into a higher space is part of the process of learning peace. And we're in the last throes of our last bit as we transit. And so when I say that, I'm not necessarily saying these are asteroids. I'm more of a mind that these are I'm gonna have to read you another bit, just because it's I never know how to address any of this, really. Truth be told, and it's funny. I'm gonna have this up like this, even though it looks like I write in the most terrible way. I remember reading that book, Last Exit to Brooklyn. I don't know if you ever read it, but it's a really hard book. But it was his first ever book, and he wrote it like you're seeing the text here. Unfortunately, I don't actually write like that. It's just I couldn't find the original bit I wrote, and so I just downloaded the text from one of my YouTube videos, and it's so it's but anyway, I'll try and make sense of it. Anyway, it was Paloma was a dove, and this was inspired because a pigeon caused the Large Hadron Collider to shut down at a critical point. And ironically, they've just fired it up. Well, they just fired it up, I think, around about July, getting ready for their big lead-iron collisions. And remember, well, we're going to talk about all of this, but we're just going to bring in the hand of God here. We're going to bring in a higher hand over the top of all of this. So we're not looking at any of this in fear. We're going to realise that there's a bigger, higher hand in the operation of all of this. And that's what I want to open with this little bit of text, because this is how I entered this whole equation, and this is why I wrote this, to bring that about, because we're not going to go fear mongering here. This is about us getting through all of this. This is the plan here. Okay, so Paloma was a dove. Well, for her entire 7.77 seconds on this earth, she was actually a pigeon. But make no mistake, where she come from, she was a dove. Her arrival on Earth was sparked by a predator ambush of another pigeon, and what could be described as a regular pigeon that just so happened to be carrying in her beak an also precious payload that, to the unsuspecting and perhaps suspecting eye, she was nothing more than a damp piece of baguette. No sooner had the pigeon seen the oncoming attacker, Paloma had immediately stepped in and completely taken over, as she took one mighty flap of those giant wings, vastly increasing her airspeed, then immediately rolled upside down on her back, closing her wings in tight to her most aerodynamic form, all whilst falling ever backwards. Paloma had initiated a high-speed vertical dive. The predatory pigeon, used to far more tactical manoeuvring, had set in rapid pursuit, following its quarry that moved like a trajectory ever downwards towards some odd-looking vent-like thing protruding from some equally odd, unearthly structure. Faster and faster, Paloma sped, leaving almost no distance left to pull out of her vertical descent, with the other bird hard on her tail, ever and ever closing in. And then what neither pigeon would have considered a rational manoeuvre, Paloma just released her quarry, that tiny piece of damp baguette that had been held so staunchly in her beak that the pursuing pigeon immediately followed the bounty ever downwards to what was fast approaching absolute terminal velocity, its beak nearly ready to close down, but it too at the very last moment had to break off from its pursuit and watched its prize disappear down that vent. It might have returned to collect its bounty if it hadn't been so utterly terrified by the immediate violent crack that echoed up through the snow-capped mountain ranges towering above the Geneva, and then equally mortified by the bright blazing flash that followed directly after, and the tiny piece of bread, damp from the saliva in the bird's mouth as it disappeared down the vent, had landed directly on a tiny circuit board somewhere below that bridged two connections that caused a massive shortcut right at the worst possible time in a process neither pigeon understood. Two pigeons were witnessed flying in completely the opposite directions above a smoking vent, above a particle collider far below, whilst Paloma had returned from whence she came. Her mission to slow down the doomsday machine by just 3 months, as by her calculations, that's all the time it would take to give humanity that little extra time to decide his fate. And that's what we're all doing now. We're deciding, because you think about a nuclear bomb. You think about where should we start? We're stopping. We've come to. I did say about this text. Yeah. So that's where it's coming from here. What the hell? We're just gonna have a bit of a. We're just gonna bring some cosmic kind of tones. We're not gonna sort of see this. We don't know what this is. It's probably debris from the tower, but from what I can see, when the time the shot came in, it's too soon. It's just still too soon for us to see the debris. But that's not, we obviously don't know that, because there's a debris, there's the object. It so could be the debris. It could just be the Large Hadron Collider, but it's probably more likely the debris from the object, to be fair. Something's up there, clearly. I'm sure Mr. MBB won't mind if I'm just going to zoom in on a few of these above there. And I'm going to show you the pattern, because you're going to see they're sort of coming up that way, but then there's others coming down that way. And to me, it looks like they're circulating up and then coming round, like they're almost rolling round, like they're being drawn in, like the gravity point is here, somewhere below where the station is, like Earth or whatever the gravity point, which I assume it's gravity, that's Earth's gravity that's drawing them in, and they're kind of like, they're coming up and they're coming round, they're looping round. I mean, they're kind of coming in all directions, but there is a general overview that these are coming round. And it's a phenomenal. It's just a phenomenal. Anyway, that's absolutely loads of them. Absolutely loads of them. It's just absolutely off the radar. Absolutely, I've never seen anything like it. Just utterly. If anything, more than anything, I want you to know that all the evidence coming forth of everything is that we live in a fantastical system. Nothing short of absolutely fantastical. So there was that. Lots of rains, lots of kind of crazy stuff. I'm not going to talk too much about the weather, even though we've had all this crazy weather going on and blah blah blah. We've come to expect that. You've come to, especially during the period I said when we were going to be really close to the blue object. There's just no amount of crazy storms that were going off. But you know, what is this big red object? Is that is that? Is that the actual dwarf planet itself that all of these objects that I show you orbit around, including the blue one? You had this shot coming in. Thor News was the first one I saw who posted it. Obviously, Brandon Corey Nagley posted it. I wondered if I got it from anywhere else. Quite a few people showed it. You know, again, it's exactly what I'm seeing over Africa. Very interesting shot. Exactly what I'm expecting to see. Sorry. I mean, if I'm seeing that shot with Brandon Corey, we're already being told the next asteroid is coming in. Just like when my mum died on the 20th of July 2020, and we were calling it Comet Nearwise coming in. And the year before, you know, this has been going on since 2010, 2011. You know, this every 200 days. What is more storms? More storms. What's that one? Yeah, something quite close to the sun there. What is that right next to the sun? Is that, you know, more activity? And I thought that was quite interesting because it was a green comet coming in, quite big, and that's quite close to when we're having all these, you know, it corroborates with what Mr. MBB from the Mary Hall shot that Mr. MBB 333 showed from the ISS. You know, just there's stuff coming up there. It looks like there's stuff coming up there, and then we get a green asteroid coming through, which is basically a low burner. It's not burning everything off, which means it's moving slowly, or it's just very big and moving slowly, or it's just moving quite slowly, not fast enough to completely burn up. Crazy sightings like this. This is, you know, World of Signs. He posted this on the 30th of August. Is this part of the blue object coming in or going out? For me, that's probably the big blue object, the haze around the big blue object as it went out. And you know, it gets trapped. It's just like it's maybe it is all just clouds and phenomenon. But you know, these are very rare that we've seen these sort of things. Here we get the same Turkey report this time, seeing the same thing as who put that well, that was Turkey report as well. So that was the 25th of September, and that was the 10th of August. That does almost look identical, doesn't it? Identical. Let me just, sorry about that. In case, let's put that one over there, just in case we've suddenly realised it's a. I think he does it all on. It's very strange, that, isn't it? How they look so. Is it just the same shot and I'm just missing it? Or is it just like... It's very obscure, isn't it? Is that really... One, two... They're all slightly different. It's very... Oh, it's just like... How is that? It's... I think that is one of those shots, though. That must be. But these are just one of what many of the kind of some of the most we're just seeing fantastic shots. It's all the evidence is there that something massive is affecting your planet. Volcanoes are going absolutely crazy. Your oceans are boiling, and the very thing that I wrote Laughing Gas about is that they're going to try and take us into this critical point to take us to this point, this lowering this vibration. And I'm of a mind that we have to do that, or our governments have to do that, or whatever's driving this agenda has to do that, because they can stop outside influencing, helping this planet if we are at war. Once we're at war, kind of higher intelligence can't come in to our aid because we are aggressors, and they're not allowed to help in case their action creates greater conflict that runs down the line. Then they are karmically entwined in that, and that brings about a whole set of situations that it makes it impossible for countries or for worlds beyond our worlds to interact and help us when we're being subverted. And my big message when I was shown, Planet X flying by our planet, or whatever that sphere that I saw flying by Earth, when I was shown this whole thing, and the words bellowed out when I saw it, it was, this is what the fuss is all about. And when I came out of the vision, I went straight to my computer and I went to my space where I get my answers, and I said, please tell me that, Mrs. And the answer I got immediately, and I can go and sit up in a mountain sometimes and write for 4 months before I can open this door. And I went straight in. I said, tell me it misses. And the answer I got was immediately, yes, it misses. It is not human karma. It is deemed you're not a race of war, but you are a race subverted with war. That primarily is why I'm not worried about the Large Hadron Collider and what they're spinning in that collider right now, because their fear of what this thing brings in. This is not so much about the destruction of our world. This is much more about massive surges in electricity, like what happened in the Carrington event in 1859. In August, where anyone in any type of electrical machine got electrocuted, basically. The whole thing just caused absolute catastrophic damage because it was such a massive surge in Schumann resonance that any electrical machinery that wasn't powered up worked, and anything that was powered up just burnt out. Any electric motor just turned into an induction welder. Great pylons carrying electricity put a resistance up and went bang, fell over. All the pylons in America just went bang in a moment, just fell over. Just bam, fast, like high torque, poof, down. What torque is rotation, but it was kind of a rotary motion because it kind of went like that as it went down. So it rotated on its axis point closest to the ground. There was rotation, if in a sense there, but it was they were pushed over, and so what happened? What else gets shut down when we just don't realize how much of the control mechanism that runs the whole ego hack that has absolutely changed humanity to these belief narratives that we think we are the noise going through our heads, and how this is used to create whole realms that we cannot see or understand, but we are being used to harvest realities for entities that we can neither see, hear, feel or touch, but they feed off us. And we also nurture our own highest aspirational creations, realms. We are gods to very high vibrational creativity. This is what I call the fifth dimension. This is what, to me, this big blue object that I call Galileo's Jupiter. The one that he was locked up because he said he could see it right there. And then, like I say, 4 years, we've got Isaac Newton, and then pretty much 84 years every after we invent a big blue planet, and rename it, and run this story to constantly conceal whatever this big blue object is. But you know, in my last videos, like I say, I explored about this passage, but what you've really got to understand is that in 2018, you know, I'm assuming 2018, May the 4th, 2018, where we got the first of the kind of like long duration volcanoes. Every year, the energy has moved one calendar month further forward. And as we got around to July and August, the storms have all happened all started to push towards July. And so July, August became this point where, you know, suddenly the biggest storms in China, they were just exponentially from about 2018, 2019, every year in July, the storms just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And obviously this is a big part, again, to do with the Pacific Basin and all the moisture amassing as rising up from all this kind of underwater volcanic activity and being snared by all these particles from coming out from the ring of fire with this massive increased eruptions that professional volcanists, can try and somehow make all the volcanoes just seem totally normal at the moment, even though you can see this breathtaking increase in volcanoes, that you can clearly see a breathtaking increase in major storms as a result of volcanoes. And it's all being swept under the carpet and being thrown onto human-caused problems, and that you need to take a hit. And if you can't move out and take carbon dioxide off your hate list, the most sacred gas that belongs on the temple, because it is the most essential gas in this planet. All life is fighting for the carbon dioxide. It's such an essential gas. We've had everything turned on its head. And it's become another, you know, we've created another religion, like so many religions, that the earth, or, you know, someone is dying or has died because of your sins, and you need to take a hit. You know, the whole Palestine thing, when it all turns, it's going to be the Palestinians died because of us and what we didn't do, and our shortfalls. All this that's going on now, this terrible atrocities, all feeds back to guilt stories. First forced perpetration, and then comes the guilt. They do it everywhere. They do it to everyone. It's the modus operandi. And only those who've got tremendous power can operate outside of that guilt, if they've got money and if they're willing to do certain things. And so it's control, and it's walking us into making heinous, terrible mistakes, but to try and create a world war at this critical time. So anyway, so this is where we are, and I was assuming that this was this point, but you can also imagine that this kind of like this every year, moving one calendar month further forward. So when we were, you know, let's say, please ignore the date here, because we're not on the 2023 point here, but just for the points of this particular, what I'm calling Hydra there, coming around, or this is really what I'm now calling Jupiter, which is hard, but obviously Jupiter isn't nearly as big as what you've been told, and many of the stories, or most of the stories you've been told, pretty much everything you've been told about what's happening up in the planets is to cover up a far more fantastical system that you're part of, you know. And it's and I've explored various different dynamics of it, but just staying with this point. So if you know, it would have been kind of January, February, March, January, February. When did we say it was? May the 4th, 2018, and then it's 1 month every year, for 1 month forward every year. And what's happened is we've started coming to the exit point now, and this exit point is, part of that exit point is clearly in the curvature of its circumnavigation round the sun, but the final part of its exit points are much coming out pretty perpendicular to the sun. Not perpendicular to the sun, because it's always going to be swinging around, but its movement is not going to be captured so much as moving one whole calendar month this way. It's going to be much more mixed. You know, it's in its fundamental exit corridor, and so we're talking about not transit and curvature. We're talking about exit, and we've been kind of chartering its kind of rotation, if you like, in it since my understanding of it. 'Cause, you know, you go back to kind of like 2000, and the last time this would have actually occurred, by my maths, would have been in I'm going to lose that bit, and I'm going to go back to 2008. And that would have been the massive Sichuan earthquake in China. And this is far from correct, this model. You know, we're looking at Hydra there, cutting across. It's come around the sun. It's come around from whence it's orbiting. We're calling it the Pluto system, or whether you want to call it the Uranus system, or whether you want to call it the Neptune system, or whether you want to call it the Pluto or the Uranus system. They're all the same thing, rebranded every 84 years to disguise this blue thing, because it always turns up basically in the same position, and that makes it really awkward because it takes away your idea. Like if you look at, say, solar system scope right now, because of the mathematics of our solar system, if I come to solar system scope and open that up, because we're at 2023 and we're also at the 84-year point, we've come around to the 84-year point, because 84 years before this it would have been kind of like, you know, when there were 1939, when Carlos Rada was predicting his massive flyby, and then the big earthquake happens on the 20th of January 1939, exactly when he predicts, and that's of course when Planet X was absolutely massive, and this is also the same time as Pluto. And then we go 84 years before that, and we're seeing oh look, it's Neptune, and then 84 years before that, it's like it's Uranus. And I love that when they show this model, because that's what it really looks like if we could see these objects. I love that when they do that. This whatever they call it, they run on solar system scope before you press the big button and see where you all are. But let me just. I love this shot, but we are going to press the button and just look at most of the planets at the moment. So we've got, where's Uranus? Where's Uranus? So we've got Uranus, Eris, Neptune, Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto. And they're all very close to each other, all over here in the same range, because this is where they all come back to the same thing. Now can I ask you, have you ever seen Pluto? Have you ever seen Neptune? Have you ever seen Eris? Have you ever seen Uranus? They're all the same thing. And they're all. I mean, if you'd look at this earlier in the year, they would have all been even closer together. It's really quite bizarre. None of these planets work, like I say, in they all have different perihelion points, which suggests the sun goes in a different direction. You know, if you know, it's kind of like the perihelion point is the closest point an object gets to in its rotation around something. So if the sun was moving forward along this line, and an object was to come up here and come round, that would be its perihelion point, and it would come back round again. That's assuming the sun was moving. And then any other objects that were also orbiting the sun would share that same front end thing, because that's the front end movement. But when you give all your main players a different perihelion points, and you say, For Pluto, the sun's moving this direction. For Saturn, the sun's moving in this direction. For Neptune, the sun's moving in this direction. For Eris, the sun's moving in this direction. And you give them all, then you take movement away from the sun, which means all the planets sit in this perfect concentric circle. Well, it's impossible to get all the planets in a perfect concentric circle unless you have the help of Isaac Newton, because Isaac Newton was the one that postulated that all the planets were put there by the hand of God. They were all just put there by divine intervention. They couldn't arrive there due to Kepler's rules, because the whole system breaks Kepler's rules, because it has a static sun, because you're not, these rules of what I'm talking about, where you have the kind of this notion of something coming around the sun and coming back round again, being close to the sun, they are the basis of Kepler's 3 rules of I was going to say thermodynamics, but orbital mechanics. And they're quite basic, but from that information, he basically reveals to you how much information can be derived. Of course, he didn't include density into that, and so often we think of Isaac Newton was the one that brought density into the equation and added gravity to the equation and upgraded, if you like, Kepler's rules. But actually, he ripped it all apart and refined the standard model to religious garbage, to absolute religious garbage that doesn't make any sense, takes all motion away from the sun and puts you into a static sun model in this pretty picture with all the planets going around the side, and none of it really makes sense. No kid out there that grapples with these high-tech kind of packages and builds these packages, like some like Universe Sandbox, some of the animation that I use. No one can build our solar system and give the sun motion and keep our system the way it is. They suddenly take on the rules of Kepler's orbital mechanics, and they all start bunching up at the same front end, and we get really close to Jupiter, and we get really close to Saturn, and we really get close to Uranus and Neptune, and they all suddenly start flying really close to the front end. And the slower these big planets go, the longer they take to come in, and the further the sun moves forward as they're tracking in, they cut right across the front. Of course they do. If you soon as you give some motion to the sun, you can't have a nice pretty concentric ring like that. It's utterly impossible. It defies all of the fundamental rules of Kepler's orbital mechanics. That's why we rely, like I say, on Isaac Newton, who brings the old hand of God back in, to the equation, and then we've got, ironically, William Herschel came from Bath. This is where he postulated Uranus. This is where Uranus started, and the subsequent every 84 years started after that, which is not 84 years after, because you understand, obviously, Uranus is an 84-year orbit. Of course it would be. He started the whole thing. Well, did he? Or are we going back to Isaac Newton? Or are we going from Isaac Newton 84 years back to the first dwarf planet ever being discovered in 1596? Or are we going back to about 84 years to when Kepler first brought his orbital mechanics together based on whatever he was observing, which would fit perfectly in with this pattern of re-seeing this thing every 84 years, as we've been seeing in this convoluted thing. So, but we can see that from 1681 to what would it have been? 1681 to not 1781, which I think is when William Herschel come up with, like, say, Uranus. It would have been 1846 is 2 times, whatever that's going to be, 2 times 84. I mean, the irony is that, obviously Uranus is 84s and Neptune is 2 times 84. 182 is a 16. 160. It's officially called 165, but yeah, and 2 times obviously 84 is 168. And so you can, it's 3 days out, or whatever it is. that's 3 years out, sorry. And then we say Pluto is 3 times 84, obviously. So you've got to work that out. 1's 8, 2 is 16, 3 is 24, 240, 1's 8, 2 is 16, 3 is 24, 240, 252. So you can just work that out. Oh yeah, it's 252 because it's 3 times 84, because it's 3 times since. It's just like, it's just like, how could, oh, don't tell me Big Blue Planet, oh, don't tell me Big Blue Planet, oh, don't tell me Big Blue Planet, 84 years time, 84 years more before the last one. It's not easy to remember these sort of maths when you're seeing these unbelievably outlandish patterns to conceal this really obvious thing that we just don't live in this system at all. We live in a far more fantastical, much more complex system that's looking much more like the original kind of like screen thing you see when you load up, ironically, this package, whatever it is, solarsystemscope.com. Anyway, come out of that, come back to that. So anyway, so I saw this video, just that the Pentagon had. The Pentagon have released a video in which a US Army soldier talks about various alien races, and talks about how he knows that aliens use high-tech weapons in 2016, on the 24th of November specifically. He said, oh, they come from a binary system. Well, that's our system. We live in a binary system. And then he said, oh, and they use weapons, directional energy weapons to create earthquakes in 2016, on the 24th of November. And that was a critical date in my model. We'd have to go to probably this one, and we go to 2016, and yeah, this so at this point here, this object coming in, the same one, the same Hydra, or whatever I'm calling it, the blue Jupiter, coming in, crossing us, ironically, on the 24th of November. But then I often wonder if I've got that confused. It fits with many of these. You can see when you're starting to understand the movement of this line here represents our sun moving in this direction. Even though all the lines are a bit kind of skewy, when the model started running, it all fell apart a little bit, but enough to try and give a ballpark understanding of what 1,800 years of movement would look like, and then to do a macro view in the last kind of like, obviously from the discovery of Pluto, and to zoom in obviously at our point here and capture kind of from 2004 to 2023, which to me was the range. The 2023 was the end range, the official perihelion point, and the official, when Fukushima went bang, that was a perihelion point of Jupiter also, the exact perihelion point of Jupiter. No one ever seems to talk about that, just goes with that myth. It's like, yeah, so what? Don't forget Jupiter's a long way away from the sun. And it's just like, well, not according to Galileo, who was never allowed to speak to another member of the public after he said it was right there and he could see all his moons and he could charter it and it was massive. And then all these other people seeing, and then all the incredible sightings we keep getting of this absolutely unbelievable blue thing, and all these absolutely massive amount of volcanoes that go utterly predictably when we're really, really close to it. And the reason I play with and give them all different names here and there as I've moved down through this over the years is kind of to reinvent the whole thing, and to also give homage to all the different names. Hydra is kind of like one of the names that, ironically, of Pluto's moons. So I'm kind of playing with this idea, because these are, whether you want to call them Pluto's moons, whether you want to call them Uranus's moons, whether you want to call them Jupiter's moons, whether you want to call them Eris's moons, you know, it's it's the big blue objects, moons, and what was I saying that I was showing? Yeah, so he said on the 24th of November, and so in previous videos I'd um, I've got that one. Oh, we got that twice. In previous videos years ago, and I don't know if I can get it, but it might be, it's a shot like that. This is when I first started realizing, you know, these sort of shots were when I first started realizing and started breaking myself out of a heliocentric model. This was the first change, and of course, you know, that shot there of showing Alex Luhan's shot on the first of September 2000, and you know, that's the 1st of September 2019, and that is this object coming in. It overwhelms to see it, but that's what you're looking at there. But if I've still got it up there, it's an old shot from a long. Oh, it is there. Look there. So when I built that model, that date down there, you could zoom in on this, and you'll see this date. It says the 22nd of November, 2016. This was the I think it's in this one. It's a model like that anyway. That's got it's just double check. There's not another one down there that I'm getting confused with. It was the original place, and it could be. I think it is that one. I don't think it's. But yeah, I think it's pretty much. It's probably that one there, to be honest with you. And so we get these kind of like we've been, and so I charted that a long time ago, you know, and this was leading up to the big flyby that was going to really put me on the map. This one that was obviously on the 20th of January again, same day as Carlos Rada's prediction. That had all these different amazing flybys before, all 200 days apart. That led me to say, listen, guys, you've got 200 days of absolute perfect patterns going on here. You cannot tell me you're not going to see oceanic anomalies. And the 22nd of November had fallen into a bigger part of the plan, and I'd said I was postulating the ideas of, it was the first time I was postulating the ideas of not just one object passing through, but one object orbiting another object. And though we were seeing one object, we surely had to experience the other object that this object was orbiting. And that's where the 22nd of November, because of previous patterns of what we'd seen in the seismology, I said, could that be a fundamental corridor? You know, could that be a corridor of sorts? You know, and so I often build these models and try and demonstrate an idea so we can think about them and poke them, and one day dreaming of being able to build animations that could demonstrate some of these ideas, and put them all into action, and show these effects. And anyway, so when I saw that, and I thought, okay, so this is you know, it says two things. First, he says that, you know, the first thing he opens with or something along the lines of, you know, they come from a binary system, and then he says they use directed or directional energy weapons, directed energy weapons, to make the volcano happen. And I predicted that volcano, and then that shot, which, you know, the video was posted on the 24th of November by World of Signs. It was another one of his epic shots. I don't know who originally posted it, to be honest with you, but just a phenomenal shot. And I always assumed that this was the big blue one going in and coming out, but also I look and I see, I can't help but kind of ignore the big red dot down here. This is an annular eclipse not being caused by the moon, utterly untalked about by anyone. Anything's, you know, it's just like we're in a Netflix movie at the moment, aren't we? Where everything is just turned on its head, and shots like this can just come in and go out, and no one seems to kind of like be bothered. But imagine if that object is that object. You know, they're spooked at the moment. They're spooked. The world, governments, everything are planning the very thing that it's all starting to unfold. Everything that that I wrote about in Laughing Gas, everything is being forced to a table. And, you know, the message I was given was, you know, I presented all of this to the gods, and I said, is this it? I said, thank you so much for showing me what I've been building into on a higher level of this safe place that I can go when the shit finally does hit the fan. Not that it's going to hit, but this place that is beyond this life where I've been building into, and that I could go, and I did this journey into this place and experience this place. I had to go through this whole death experience to get in, and then to be kind of wakened into my body back from this space so I could incarnate on this planet from Jupiter. I know that sounds insane. It's probably all a load of bollocks and everything else like that, but that was my experience. That was totally my experience. As over the top as it was, Laughing Gas is the migration of a soul from the Earth astral realms to the fifth dimensional astral realms. We're all building into the astral realms. Many of us are from the astral realms. I'm just migrating. I was migrating I was leaving the Earth astral realms. I know that sounds absolutely over the top, and then I just went off on a massive journey of just trying to turn all of that into a book and trying to understand that. But they're spooked at the moment, and everything that I spent years writing about is suddenly unfolding. Everyone's too scared to look at it, and that's the worst thing you can do right now, because that is, you're scared to look at this is utter guilt. What have you got to be scared of? Surely, if you're not part of the problem, then you've got nothing to be scared of. Surely, it's like, you know, if you can look at someone in the whites of the eyes, you know what I mean? What? But I want to think about, you know, it's. Is there any other shots there that I wanted to bring in? You know, only that, you know, for everything, my original journey in this was understanding that this whole fault line was caused by a massive event that created, you know, that's the bottom of the Pacific Basin where this is the split point. It's split open here. All the magma came up through this big split, went in all directions and consumed half our planet. And you can see it's just literally travelled all the way across the globe. It's butted up here. It's created the Andes in South America. It's butted up here and caused this massive land shift at the bottom of Antarctica. There, at the bottom of Antarctica, yeah, and smashed through and caused this massive interest. You know, the kind of the Sandwich Islands and what have you on this raised pick of literally magma, a sea of magma that's punched through the whole Pacific Basin, was all created in one Foul swoop, half our planet. It wasn't just magma, it was magma and water. And it was all came from Mars by this massive 4,000 kilometers long, 200 kilometers wide, with this massive detonation point. This wasn't what Paul Thornhill was trying to tell you, a thunderbolt. This wasn't a thunderbolt. You kind of like, you kind of like, you got a thunderbolt anywhere. Remember the thunderbolt that Jeff P caught on the 14th of October 2016. That was a thunderbolt into the side of Mars. Mars was exactly where this was. This was like 10, 11 o'clock at night, looking northeast, caught on a webcam by Jeff P. Yeah, the 14th of October. Look at that. You know, there's no massive scar on the side of Mars after that. Nothing changed, and yet there's your thunderbolt going right into the side, this big object that we can't believe, thunderbolting into the side of Mars. And that's Jupiter interacting with Mars. Can't believe it. I know. But where were we before? Find that page. But that is the big split that was caused by a large Hadron Collider using, you think about what iron is, or lead, because they're putting lead, they're not putting just protons, they're putting lead, you know, the nuclei of a lead ion, a lead atom, into these large Hadron Colliders, and they're firing them. You know, can I ask you, because I think you understand all this sort of stuff, and you might think I don't understand it. You might think I understand this, and I'm not claiming to understand this. I'm just looking. This is when. Well, before I say that, because I might not even have time to say that, but number one, you can see where all the water channels where this drained in. This is what Wall Thornhill of the Thunderbolt Project would try and tell you. This is electricity. This is drainage. This planet was covered with oceans, and it went somewhere, and we're trying to say, where did it go? It's not smooth as a baby's bottom, as you'd expect with evaporation, as they're trying to tell you. It all just evaporated. The whole thing would just be like we've seen where oceans evaporate. It's very smooth. This is torn to bits. Everything's torn up. Rocks and boulders everywhere. The water exited rapidly, and Velikovsky, Emmanuel Velikovsky, Worlds and Collisions, he was coming up with, the very ideas that were kind of like played with that Chinese Netflix series, The Wandering Earth, where Earth is moved out past Jupiter using rockets attached to Earth, and then it gets really too close to Jupiter and the oceans get sucked up. Loads of our oceans get sucked up because we get too close to Jupiter. And the Roosh effect starts taking effect, and gravity starts being nullified by close proximity, almost like when we get very close to the moon, especially in alignment with the sun, and it's intensified, or de-intensified, and suddenly the oceans raise towards the moon. But the moon hasn't changed distance, ironically. It's just the intensity of the gravitational equation of us being in alignment with the sun. But in that case, we suddenly, in that depiction, it was following with Emmanuel Velikovsky's ideas of worlds in collision, or worlds so close together they sucked each other's waters out. But that wouldn't explain this incredible fault line. This is 200 it's 200 miles or 200 kilometers wide, I think. It's like 7 miles deep. It's deeper than our mountains at all. It's perfectly straight. It's the most phenomenal fault line known to man, and it's where the waters from Mars drained up into Earth. This was a dimensional tear. This is a link between the worlds. This occurred deep under the floor, the mantle, 2,000-3,000 kilometers below the mantle of Earth, because Mars is smaller than Earth, and it wouldn't have just sucked out Mars's Earth, it would have sucked out much of Mars's magma as well. Mars would have suffered a catastrophic loss in magma, and Earth would have sucked up that magma and increased in size, as well as taking its water. It took its mass. And can I ask you, when you're thinking about kind of like what's happening with the Large Hadron Collider? The first day they fired it up. I talk about Paloma and the baguette and how it caused the massive problem. And when you're colliding particles around, very soon on the first day they fired it, I got on a plane not knowing anything about the whole thing on the 10th of the 9th of the 8th, 10/9/8, 3, 2, 1, Big Bang, as in we're going to recreate the Big Bang here on Earth to prove. And of course you're creating a bomb. This is literally what this thing is. It's creating a massive bomb. This is what it does. When you're talking about uranium, you're talking about something after a lot of years, millions of years, I don't know, billions of years, millions of it, 100 million years, something stupid like that. Lead or uranium is going to revert back to lead. It's going to bleed out all the protons and neutrons excess. It would have been like hydrogen jumping into helium with the big sun, like we see, the lightest thing on the periodic table jumping into that next lightest thing on the periodic table. So our sun is made of the lightest thing on the periodic table. How on earth we could have it as the main player when it's the lightest atomic density of all the big players? How we could have it as the biggest player when you've got kind of the idea of gas giants that aren't spewing out, say, 2 hydrogens being formed into helium, or 2 heliums being formed into it's not cadmium, it's what is it? I'll tell you what it is. Next on the periodic table, I've even got a periodic table up here. It's what are batteries made of? I haven't got a periodic table, have I? Periodic table. Oh, I haven't got P's either. Oh my god, my P's not working on the computer. This is the sign of the times. Whatever batteries are made of. Lithium ion? Is it lithium? Lithium batteries? Maybe it is lithium. So I wish my P's worked. First colliders, have I got a P there? Spot me a P. Not that it really matters, because they're nothing to do with but I'm just talking about the kind of whole process of the kind of like what are we on anyway? We'll come back to that shot anyway. This process of moving up the periodic table, and so when you've got, say, a dwarf planet that's spewing out not kind of like helium or the next on the periodic table after helium. I was going to say thorium there, but that's kind of that's uranium-y kind of like level sort of stuff. That's really heavy materials, but it's not cadmium. Anyway, I'm so sorry. My mind's gone blank on the periodic table, but you're forcing up a level in terms of the sun is forcing these things together, and suddenly 2 independent atoms, like 2 hydrogens with 1 proton, 1 neutron, 1 electron, suddenly jump into 1 new atom and become helium with 2 protons, 2 neutrons, 2 electrons, and we get this very simple mathematical kind of increase. And then then maybe those 2 can absorb 1 and form, because helium's 3, no, helium's 2, so the next one on the which is not thorium, it's whatever batteries are made of. God, so annoying. I'm forgetting that name. It's because the simple names are always ones that evade my memory. But the third on the periodic table, three electrons, 3 protons, 3 neutrons, I think, but is the stuff that they make batteries out of. I'm pretty much sure. And then going up and up and up, and each time matter is jumped into another form with this massive amount of pressure in something like the sun, and so it's not. And this is kind of building all this matter, and every time these new atoms are formed during not fission but fusion, they take on all these new characteristics and become a whole new experience of matter unto itself, a whole new expression of matter, and have all new sort of qualities, can jump from non-metals to metals to all sorts of kind of wonderful changes just with their changes in their atomic density. Become completely different types of material. They go through a metamorphosis, if you like, or whatever that is, as a result of fusion and change. And so, what happens when you get, say, water, and you haven't jumped it up into water? Are we saying water? I guess we are saying water. When you kind of, or what happens when you take, with these ideas of making heavy water, where you increase certain elements within the water, and we think about what's happening with, I don't know, where carbon dioxide goes into water and produces. It's a different process. I'm talking about there, kind of like, I'm actually talking about a molecule there, an expanded molecule, and here I'm talking about an acid, like an atom. An atom, and how an atom grows and develops, and how multiple atoms can come together under huge, great pressure and form new elements, completely new elements, to the point comes where you get like a massive planet that spews out iron because it's so heavy. How is our sun going to orbit something that's doing that process? It's something that's got that type of pressure. Our sun would be iron and spewing out iron if it could do that, and if it's not doing that, then it's not as big and it's not as dense as that. It's not an old dwarf planet. It's something that's been hydrogen going into helium, and then it's gone through that, and it's dimming down because it's doing a different type of process, but it's got massive gravitational properties. It ain't going to be orbiting our sun. Our sun would be orbiting it. Our sun would be the small player. It would be the child in that relationship. It would be the smallest player. It would not be the primary. And so when you're actually going up to things like lead, and it goes through this massive process of massive pressure, even though we're told that all of this, or anything beyond iron, was all created in a big bang scenario. So anything, dwarf planets can spew out iron, and this is the last phase of this type of creation of matter, apparently, as I'm understanding it from what I've read about, kind of like understanding of. I don't believe any of that. I believe that this process that produces iron is the same process, and this massive production of new elements is a result of incredible pressures. And if the longer a supernova can be stopped to occur, these massive processes can keep going, and matter can more and more dense can be made. And obviously gold is gold is lighter than is lighter than lead, but the gold is below lead, even though it's obviously heavier than gold. But it's atomically it's got less protons and neutrons, but it's one's like 70 something. I think gold's in its 70s. Lead's in its 80s. It's heavier, even though it's funny that, isn't it? How I guess you just get so many more atoms for your buck in gold, even though gold's lighter in density. It's a lot more atoms packed closer in the material, that it's heavier overall. But the lead is like crammed, and once you get crammed even more kind of protons and neutrons into that, it's not formed, it's not jumped into the next stable element. So it can bleed off these excess protons or neutrons because they're not making the whole new next layer of atom to jump up in the periodic table to be a kind of a stable atom forever. So it becomes radioactive and it breeds protons and neutrons, and this is radiation, and this is what we take advantage of to make a nuclear bomb. In actual fact, a nuclear bomb, we take the kind of like, we enrich the uranium, we put it in centrifuges so we can squeeze even more density into that, so we can make it more volatile, so when critical mass occurs, it goes bang. But nonetheless, these are all lead. So can I ask you, back to this question, what happens? Where does the energy go? If, say, for example, the day I watch, I'm flying over the Large Hadron Collider on the 10th, the 9th, the 8th, and they fire it up, and it all goes wrong. Whilst mid-flight, it all goes wrong, everything goes kaput, which is quite fortunate, really, because I've heard these ideas that they create such strong force fields that if a plane's flying along, it could potentially hit the side of the force field. It would be like hitting a balsa wood plane hitting a brick wall. It would just shatter, and there is funny kind of, anyway. But anyway, I was concerned about that, and there had been stories and blah 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 after, I might add, but the whole thing went wrong, and one of the magnets failed, and everything went wrong, and blah blah blah, and I ended up writing this whole little story about it, which led to another story, and this, I started inquiring as to why do I get on a plane? Is that just by chance? Is that thing? How did that work? And I want to ask you again, where does, if they're getting it, they put the energy into the Large Hadron Collider on the 10th and 9th of the 8th, within no time they had the speed going up to 11,000 cycles a second around a 27 kilometer long ring, and so they get it up to 11,000 cycles a second. I don't know how long it takes. It still took probably weeks, but I haven't got a clue how long it takes. But it takes a hell of a long time. But once they get it up to this speed that Einstein knew about, the speed of light, they get it up to the 99.999% of the speed of light. They can't go any faster. And so they've put all the money, all the energy in to get it up there. Where is the energy, Reg? Remember, not the 3 rules of orbital mechanics. Going back to the 3 rules of lithium. That's the word. That's what I did say. Lithium, didn't I? I think I did say lithium anyway, but it's just come to me there. Sorry, the third. When you're going up the periodic table after helium, I guess it is lithium, and then. Oh no, I'm not going to do another one. Anyway, where does the energy go? In your mind's eye, you might not know the answer to that, and you might not think, I just don't really want to even bother. Well, who cares? But just to allow your mind to play with the idea, where are we going to see the needle rise? We can't go any faster. And we're going to keep pouring energy in, and the energy's going somewhere. So if we're taking all of these it's got its own nuclear, CERN's got its own nuclear power station, and then it's tapping into all these other nuclear power stations all across Europe and anywhere they can get their power to pump in. Everyone's sending all their energy, which are all getting collected into these lead ions. Where do they read it? They're seeing the magnets take all this energy. But where is the energy going? What is changing in the atom when the atom can't go any faster? Is it getting hotter? Is it getting colder? Is it shaking more? Is it what's increasing? Well, I'll tell you what's increasing. It's increasing massively, as in its mass is increasing. Its mass is increasing. And we are seeing what happens when we take lead with excess protons and neutrons, and we create a chain reaction. We put it into a critical mass state. In the old ways, it was just with kind of the old atom bombs. It was taking, I don't know if we'd processed plutonium at that stage, whether it was uranium. I guess it must have been uranium or something like that. And we'd drilled a hole in it and got a pin that we'd rammed another pin, I guess, of uranium or whatever the material was, and basically rammed it in with a massive explosion into a space it just couldn't fit, and that's how we created critical mass. Although now I'm sensing, or I think I'm understanding, that it's done with a highly explosive gas on the inside of a sphere and a highly explosive gas on the outside of a sphere, and all of the explosion pressure has to be absolutely equal at the same time to create the absolute critical mass within and without of the and beyond the sphere, to apply kind of pressure to this thing to create the critical mass that a chain reaction occurs. And here we have these lead ions that we say, oh, they're tiny little particles, but we don't really understand what we're really talking about, because we don't really understand what tiny, and we don't really understand tiny, and we don't really understand big in a universe that is massive beyond comprehension, and we are tiny in comprehension. The whole thing is a bit of a convoluted, and yet we can take the contents in these tiny particles. We can take all this power that we've generated from these power stations and pour it into these atoms that were tiny little things and now are massively bigger, and collide them in this new experiment, each travelling at 99.9% of the speed of light, and throw them up against the fundamental walls of our reality, of this time-locked vault, our vaulted world. Because you might be able to find Earth, you might be able to find our solar system in the universe. If you had the right how, maybe you could use heat signature sort of stuff. You're thinking, I'm going to find the sun, and or Earth, or whichever one you're looking for. But though you might find it, you might find where, but then you've got to kind of work out when. And then it starts getting tricky. Because you've suddenly opened up. It's like an algorithm of complexity. That now you're not looking, where, when you actually add when to the equation of where, the whole thing becomes exponentially complicated, because you end up with a real difficult thing to find. So whole worlds could be hidden away here and there, and you have absolutely no idea about them. At least you know about this one. What's this going on? And you're here. Whilst it's all going on, I've broken another pair of glasses. It's good to make a video. It's a big part of my therapy, and so I just waffle on. But you're at this kind of point where a massive experiment, and the Atlas experiment, the rabbit hole is attempting to be open here because of fear of what this thing is and the judgment of what this thing is. And there's no good that can come out of this. This is a world killer, and it's not going to be allowed to happen. The only thing that can open this gate is karma. And humanity is not creating this war right now to make this bomb go bang. It's a karmic equation, and the gods can step in. And yeah, that's days away now. That's Monday the 16th of October. They're going to be doing that either to the 20th of October or to the end, or to the end of this month. So they tell us. I mean, like I say, when they fired it up this year, the whole thing went wrong and it blew a hole in the side. Not as bad as what happened in 2008 and subsequent other kind of disasters they've had to repair down the way when things have gone wrong. But these are big dangerous experiments, and if they go wrong, it's you know, they're all preparing for something at the moment, and they're desperately trying to get you to back a war, and you do not want to be at war when you're close to Jupiter, because that is a no-no. Your soul will be either, well, it's just, you know, you've just got to decide. This is your time to decide. Many of you are going to be kind of like there thinking, no, this is war is right on, and you know, apparently Hamas have done some pretty heinous crimes out there. I think Erdogan has Erdogan's kind of really come forward and been the owner, because when Egypt started bombing Palestine, it was just like, actually, we thought you'd be way on the other side of the fence, but what did can't find it now. So Antony Blinken, US Secretary of State, he visited Israel just the other day, and he said, I'm not here in the capacity of a minister, but with a Jewish identity. And I think it was his best of the things he's ever said, actually, because it was just like, actually, I mean, Erdogan's picked it up, and he said, so this is a religious war. This is a Jewish war against these people, against Muslims, and against non-Jews. This is a Jewish war. It's, you know, it's absolute disproportionate response. You've just gone absolutely. You've taken it to a level that's below the table. Erdogan said that, you know, from Turkey. So you know, I'm a NATO member, and everyone was saying Erdogan was a turncoat because he was playing like he was just about to kind of become kind of big, kind of like just kind of be much closer to his. Well, I don't know. I'm not actually too sure what kind of like what his religious lineage is, you know, and so it's kind of like but you know, it's just to say Muslim, dangerous for me here, because I don't know what side of the fence he's absolutely on there, but because lots of it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. But Turkey is in Europe, and Turkey's kind of like suddenly been the one country from Europe that's dropping aid on Palestine, on Gaza, which, after everything else, he was a turncoat and that sort of stuff, turns out to be the one that actually kind of says, actually, no, I can't do it, all because of that. And that blew me away. You know, we've yet to have some of the heinous crimes that we've been told that Hamas have done, the real heinous ones. I mean, I don't agree with taking hostages, but I know that, you know, Israel obviously takes a lot of there's a lot of Palestinians in Jewish prisons, and you know that they're there because it's kind of, they've got a law system, and Israel has got recognised sovereignty, but obviously Palestine had all its recognised sovereignty taken away, so there's nothing you can do in Palestine that is illegal when it comes to taking lives, because there's no recognised sovereignty. So there's nothing that's against the law. It's just all about morality, whether it's right to kind of like whether it's you know, there's no right. It's all about right. You know, it's not a law thing. It's and it's not a moral thing if no one cares. And but I'm of a mind that people do care, and I'm of a mind that they don't know what to do. I'm of a mind that many countries that could stand in opposition to this know that if they stand up against this, they're just going to go to their deaths. And I'm of a mind that the people of my country and I'm of a mind that the people of Europe don't want this. I can't say about the American people, because I know they've been much more institutionalized into war and everything else like that, and I can imagine a lot of people in America are thinking, yeah, this is absolutely fantastic, we're going to get into this, you know, I think, but can this be used as the karmic trigger for the Alice experiment? Open up the rabbit hole. You know, what is a direct invasion on Earth? Is a direct invasion on everything that invested into the Earth experience and the whole Earth, whatever this wonderland of opportunity is. And this thing is ultimately an invasion. This thing is a gun to all of our heads. The Large Hadron Collider is a gun to all of our heads. And so we're all being pushed into a situation, a deal is being forced. I'm of mind, you know, laughing gas, unprecedented peace will now be waged on your Earth. That's the thing I got. Don't worry about your Earth. I've already deployed my best. Unprecedented peace will now be waged upon your Earth. And so I've had these few kind of like things, and I've had to just retreat into the comfort of that over the last kind of like few months, because I myself seeing it going on has just overwhelmed me. So this is the first video for a long time, and it's a right old waffle, and I'm sorry I've just like I'm sorry it's taken so long to do it. I just you know, and it's that's what you're up against right now, and this means ultimately that it's being forced. It's going to happen. It's going to be a win-win-win situation, and parts of it are going to be a lose-lose-lose situation. But this planet will endure this process. We will get through this. You know, Paloma will come to our rescue. And because it's out of our hands a little bit now. They're going to do everything they can to try and start this now. Everything they already have, they're laying everything on the line to draw everyone in, to get all out conflict happening. And it's getting you to choose, and you're not choosing a side. You're choosing a soul, but you're being presented with this idea that you're choosing a side. And peace is the only way through this now. And for all those that are suffering, wow, brutal. Pentagon was right. They've gone in there way too heavy for the crimes that they said they've done, and for all that's happened against them in the name of taking their land back and giving the Jewish state over. There's been a lot of suffering and a lot of taking, a lot of profiteering. And I love trance parties. I love trance parties. I used to go to trance parties all the time. It was a trance party. I would have known lots and lots of people at that party. And you know, the first party where I saw an eclipse was in India, Balaswar in India. Crazy party. A lot of Israelis there. Great party. But it was very close. That party was very, very close to the Gaza border. You know, and it's a lot of freedoms and a lot of enjoyment and a lot of consumptions of wonderful stuff that they could only marvel at. They could only wonder at what it might be like to have a tiny, tiny part of the type of wealth that the people at that party were kind of like showing whilst they were kind of having their wild party on land that was by those who've got very little. And so its location could have also exacerbated the response. Doing it so close to the border. You know, the whole thing is just but you know, well, the response is just I bet the Palestinians didn't even know anything about it. Just trying to get on with whatever life they can carve out of absolutely nothing that's coming their way. Everything's taken from them. Their whole lives turned into this nothing more than a tinderbox to be used by warmongers with the press of a button to create the karma they need to destroy all of our realities. If we let it. And right now is your own journey. Right now is how peaceful are you? I know I've been really struggling. My mind has been absolutely tortured over the last few months. It's just like I talk about going into a singularity and whether I'm going to become my higher self or whether I'm just going to go back to becoming my ego self and just becoming a nasty, selfish little git. And for the last 2 months, I have just been animal-minded, not evolved at all. I've been utterly shut down. It's like I haven't been here. It's like I feel like there's been a massive transit going on. Like lots and lots of people are leaving at the moment. They're changing. They're becoming harder, more insensitive, the ones that can just absolutely take and have, people just seem being a lot more selfish. And it's making me be selfish because all my money's running out. Everything's just really difficult, and I'm, it's that and obviously the platforms are all shut down, and it's seeing this whole thing with Russell Brand as well. It's so funny, kind of like, you really should watch that video. It's quite funny. My first video, will Russell Brand appear in Lewis prison? Well, it is what it is. It's a bit of theatre, but it tells the story of I wrote it at the time when the Battle of Democracy, with the 750th anniversary of the Battle of Democracy, and I'm fascinated by most old English battles, and the family lines, and the kind of like how they intersperse, and the same names that come up, and especially when you track back King John, and we're talking about King John's father, when we're talking about kind of Henry III and Henry III's son, Longshanks, Edward I, and Edward I would be kind of like would be father to when was the Peasants' Revolt? 1381, 1264. No, so it would have been. So Richard II, who was in, I'm confusing my stories a little bit, but Richard II, who was the king, the 10-year-old king, who had the Mayor of London who was running the country for him when the Peasants' Revolt all occurred, Wat Tyler and the Peasants' Revolt 1381. I'm trying to think whose son he was, because you can work it out, and normally work the maths of it all out, so probably he was Edward I's son, because Edward I would have been young then, or unless there's another king, there might have been another king in between. I'm just trying to think who it could have been that would have left, died and left such a young king. Maybe that would have been difficult for. Anyway, by the by, I confuse all these horrible stories and everything else like that, and I sound like I know my history, and then I should go and fall apart. But anyway, the specific areas of the battles in between, and some of the gaps, I get a little bit confused. But some of the stories, oh my God, you rip the stories apart and you start looking at them, and you start seeing, just by the mass of the stories and everything was involved, that no way did the stories unfold as you've been told. And the Battle of Lewis is one of those stories. It just doesn't make any sense. It's a Superman story, and our victorious Simon de Montfort, who actually turns out to be the king's brother-in-law that he defeats. He turns out he's just up against so much opposition that it's just a Superman story. And what's always omitted in these stories so often is the people. It's the people. And there's been, we think of the first, the Civil War, the first Civil War in England. The kind of the Roundheads and the Cavaliers, Charles I against kind of like Cromwell, Oliver Cromwell. First Civil War, England's first English Civil War. It's just utter ridiculous notions. We've been standing up to rogue kings and queens and crazy leaders all the way through. And when they've gone right off peace, they've been put in their place. And the Battle of Lewis was an epic story. If it was turned into a film, it'd be one of the most epic films you've ever seen, because the story is fantastical. The official story, but when you actually kind of really, if you were to really rework it, and see what really happened, it is it's all your favourite characters. Robin Hood would be in it. They'd all be there. It'd be an all-star cast. It would be kind of like He was the one that was William Wallace, who went up against William Wallace, who then become, um, and then became, because obviously William Wallace went up against Edward I as well, so we're talking about all the same characters. That's the other thing, is I had this COVID thing for like about 3 or 4 weeks. That's been an emotional drop kick as well. But Robert the Bruce, he was there in the Battle of Lewis. Oh my God, the Battle of Lewis, hilarious, absolutely unbelievable stab, and it just reeks of massive uprising, just like what happened in the Peasants' Revolt. Proper uprising. And we also get the power of the people, and they try to omit that in all the crazy old historic stories of our past and grand battles. Anyway, that's it, guys. Load of old whatever today, I'm afraid. I can't really kind of like, I'm just watching this whole thing right now and just seeing what they're doing and knowing that this is all linked, this is all part of the same story. And this flyby that is not in my timeline, even though we're seeing it coming in, is looking to be quite present, and I just don't know what the exit of it really is. Is it? You remember kind of like the which one was it? Do you remember? I got it. It's on that shot. I always love that shot. We won't explore that too much. But you remember the Calvin looking for Hobbes shot?
Like a portal opener.
Looks like a portal opening up. Did you just say that?
Looks like a portal opener. Nice.
Look at that. That is. I'm of mind, and now is that coming or going? To me, that I always assumed that was about to. That's kind of running parallel with us. It's not coming towards us, so it's as it would be. We'll be looking at it. If we're looking out in space, so that's running along, like parallel to us as it was coming towards us. Like I say, it's just like that shot, that World of Signs shot, but that's running next to us, so that's not at the exit point. It's running parallel to us, and on the 15th of August 2020, I think it was an epic shot. And it's because the sun's coming up and down. If this thing's doing that, then it's running parallel with the sun, which means when it starts getting to its exit point, we start looking at it and it becomes a different thing. So we're just seeing something that's getting closer and closer to us at that point. But now we're talking about coming to exit strategy, and whether this was the one, we're close to exit strategy there. Would it be closer to us next time? Is it another one that keeps getting closer, moving further forward, or is that moving away? It's only time will tell now, and I haven't got any more timelines on this at the moment. I can make a prediction about next year, about the blue one. The twins, I can't see any more close flybys of those two. Not for a long time yet, and we're all moving away from these kind of these long duration volcanoes. So it's whatever this does, and then we have to wait until we get to August next year before I can see another big flyby of that big blue one. And maybe I've got that whole blue one wrong, and maybe we've done that, and maybe we've kind of moved past this. All this does is reduces us into the whole purpose of these objects is not to destroy this planet, is to safeguard our going back to a state of singularity, as in one soul, one body, no backseat drivers, that's the coupling, and we get a simple life to know what it is to be a whole human being anymore, without our idea of I. We don't know which I is which anymore within ourselves. We don't know which is our highest aspiration and which is our ego aspiration. So and we've been so confused with so much stuff and this will sort it all out. This will sort all of this out. And the powers that be and their dark agendas will try and do whatever they're doing then. This is negotiating. We're being held to ransom by this large Hadron Collider and all the different things that are being held in place, and we don't know how to go out of it, so we just got to go through this moment by moment. But it is not deemed, from everything I understand, that we are a nation of war. That humanity is not bad. We are being subverted by a dark agenda, but we are not dark. And we will prevail. And you've got to decide which side of the equation you're on. And what you're giving power to and what you're not giving power to. Take care. Ciao.